Okay, here I come. Hello, hello, Joy here. It is Thursday, January 28, 2015. And if my new camera has a delay button on it for starting the video, I have not found it yet. And I know you're saying, why don't you read the instruction book? Well, the instruction book's this big and has about 5 pages in it. And it doesn't tell you hardly anything about what it does or doesn't do. So, that is not the solution. I'll have to figure it out. Maybe I can Google it and somebody knows about the camera. I made the cutest blouse. Now, I'm not usually into tunics because I think they always look like maternity tops. But I thought maybe I could make it, and if I made it out of the right material, maybe it wouldn't look so maternity-y. So I bought this fabric the other day, and since I had issues with it in the dryer, like I talked about the other day, it's the weirdest fabric. If it gets any places on it rubbed, if it rubs against itself or if it gets a fold in it, the black comes off and it leaves a mark. Over here, you know, I bought those friction pens, F-R-I-X-I-O-N, they're called friction pens. And they're supposed to be so wonderful because when you make a mark with them, all you have to do is touch it with an iron and the mark comes out. Well, if you buy them and you want to use them, be extremely sure that there's no other kind of pens next to them that you could accidentally pick up and use. I picked up a permanent fine felt tip marker and marked the shoulder with it, thinking it was the friction kind. And then, of course, I ironed it and ironed it and ironed it, trying to get it out. It would not come out. So, thank goodness I hadn't washed and dried it yet. And I took it out in the laundry room and I soaked it with Grandma's something or other that comes in the little bottle from Hancock's. And I rubbed it and it finally came out. But now I have white marks up here on the crease of this shoulder where I rubbed it. So, I love, love, love this print. But it's all cotton. But the fabric just, I don't know if it's the dye or what, it just seems to have issues. Anyhow, this is the pattern. It's called New Look 6602. Let me see if I can get it close enough that you can see it. I thought it was really cute. Looks like what I wore when I was a teenager. And it doesn't look that much like a maternity top on them, does it? Well, I guess it sort of does. But we just have to know this is the style. You know, that's a problem with the style. By the time I get around to wearing the current style, it's not current anymore and something else is in style. By the time spring comes out this year, it's probably going to be skin-tight tube tops or something. But anyway, very cute top. Now, I had issues with it, of course. The same issues I always have. But I made a note to tell you the fun things that I've learned from other people that I was able to use with this top. Number one is from Peggy Sagers. Now, Peggy Sagers is the most generous, wonderful teacher, but she is not that good of a teacher in some ways. She really, really wants to get her point across, but she's a poor communicator, if that makes sense. The way she says it makes sense to her, but it doesn't make sense to the listener, if that makes sense. But anyway, she finally said this. I've heard her say this. I have her book on it. And I've heard her say it over and over and over again, and I never understood it until the other day. And so if you go to silhouettepatterns.com and look for her videos, she's making YouTube videos now. She has a YouTube channel. Let me see, what was the subject? I think it was something about building a wardrobe. I don't know. Building a wardrobe for winter and spring or something like that. But it was just recent, so look for something with the recent date, January 2015. And she talks about this. And she had made, what did she make? A jacket? Yeah, she was making jackets. And she talked about the proportions of your body. And you can't see my whole body, but if I back up enough, maybe you can. What you do is you measure from your shoulder to your knee. Now, that doesn't sound like that big a deal, does it? But it is that big a deal because there's more than one way to measure from your shoulder to your knee. And we're used to measuring from our shoulder across our bust and then down to our waist to find our waist measurement. And so every time I measured from my shoulder to my knee, I just went down my chest, held the tape measure tight, and then I put it down to my knee and held it again. Then I would bend over like this and look down at my knee. I came up with a different measurement every time I did it, number one. So while she was on YouTube the other night, I asked a question. You can ask questions when you're on there. And actually, I think it was the YouTube before this one. I said, how do you measure from your shoulder to your knee? Do you measure over your bust? And she got the question, and she said, no, that is not how you do it. The measurement from your shoulder to your knee for determining how long to make the garment that you're making. That measurement, and I don't have a measuring tape, but it's like you were a flat piece of paper person and you didn't have any stomach or any boobs or anything. And so it's a flat measurement from the tip of your shoulder to your knee. So my husband was here yesterday, and so I told him, I said, play like I'm a piece of paper. He always about falls off his chair every time I ask him to measure me, because I'm always asking him to measure me. He's like, good grief, what now? I said, play like I'm a piece of paper and measure me from my shoulder to my knee. And he came up with 35 inches. Now I had come up with 36 inches, 35 and a half inches, 33 inches. I came up with a different amount every time I did it. So I wrote down 35 inches. Now, the way you determine where to put the hem of your top is you either divide that 35 in half and you make your hem to that number, which would be 1 to 1. Or you can take that measurement and divide it into 3. And then you can either do 2 parts on top or 2 parts on bottom. Or you can divide it into 4. And you could put 3 parts on top or 3 parts on and 1 part. 3 to 1, 2 to 2, would it be? 2 to 2, 3 to 1, whatever. Anyhow, I decided I wanted to do 2 to 1. So, you think that might be no big deal. But in this pattern, I ended up shortening this 6 whole inches to get it so it would be a 2 to 1 measurement from my shoulder to my knee. And I really like where it came out. Now, still, it does kind of look like a maternity top, and my husband said it did. But remember, this is 100% cotton, so it's kind of stiff. It says to make it out of cotton on the pattern envelope, though. But if I had a softer cotton or a softer fabric, then it would hang closer to my body. Plus, you're supposed to wear those skin-tight, skinny jeans with it, or yoga pants. And I'm going to go this afternoon after I feed my husband, I'm going to go and see if I can find some skinnier jeans. I mean, these aren't real big, but they aren't, you know, they're supposed to be like this and fit you kind of tight. So I'll see if I can find some of those at Penny's or something. Let me see what else I want to tell you. I want to tell you that when you're learning how to sew, and you watch all the different teachers on the internet, or if you go to classes, you will pick up tips from each and every different one. Now, I picked up that tip about how to figure out where to put the length of your jacket or your blouse from Peggy Sager's. I picked up this next tip from Louise Cutting, and Louise Cutting is marvelous. Louise Cutting does everything very understandably. Louise Cutting is an excellent teacher. She has kind of show and tell, and she's very, very good at making a sentence that is understandable by the listener, if that makes sense. I'll tell you, somebody who's terrible at that is Sandra Betsita. And she starts to say so many things, and she'll say 2 words, and then she'll go to something else, and she never finishes her sentences. Drives me crazy. But I've learned things from Sandra Betsita too. I love her. She's a wonderful, wonderful person, and knows 10 trillion more things than I do about sewing. So just because I say something a little bit negative, don't think they're not good teachers. But this is something that I learned from Louise Cutting, and you can learn it too. It's called mitered corners. Now, this pattern that I have on had a hem that folded up 1.5 inch. The side seam folded in 5/8 inch, like this. And so then the pattern instructions said, you know, just sew the hem on the bottom and sew up the side of the side seam. Well, I learned from Louise Cutting, and you can too because she has a YouTube video on it now, Louise Cutting or Cutting Line Designs, on how to do mitered corners. And so instead of doing the 4 corners, because it opens on the side, see the slit? That's another thing I really, really like about it, is the slits on the side. So instead of just sewing it here and here, like the instructions, let me see if I can get up close enough. every corner, I'm out of the light now, every corner is a mitered corner. So I have 4 mitered corners, which I think are really, really nice. And Louise Cutting does mitered corners on everything. Anything that has a corner, it's mitered from Louise Cutting. So, I told you the pattern number. Oh, I wanted to tell you some more of the alterations that I did. I decided I wanted 2 to 1, so I shortened it 6 inches. Then, it already had a bust dart in it, but I decided to do my usual full bust adjustment, and so I did a 1 inch full bust adjustment. In the back, I did the round back up at the top of my shoulders. Well, not my shoulders, but just below my shoulders, by my shoulder blades. And then I did the sway back right here. So, that's all the adjustments I had to do. And I just love the little buttons up here. Can you see the buttons? Aren't they cute? And we can unbutton one. Yeah, see? So this is just a part. It just comes apart. And so you really just have one shoulder sewn in. And the buttons were just perfect, perfect match for this fabric. I was excited to get them. Okay, that's all. I'm gonna go eat lunch and feed my husband. And then, since I'm in Oklahoma City and we have lightning speed internet, this will upload in like 1 to 2 minutes. So, I'm gonna put it on today's blog. And until next time, bye. Let me see if I can turn this on.